Our clothes, as a mirror, reflect the history of civilization. It is more than second layer, as nowadays fashion and style became the way of self-expression. Seeing deep symbolism in surrounding material things. Speaking via things and rituals is absolutely in Kazakh style. That is why the history of national costume is an incredible world exposing our mentality. Today in the program, Saptama etik, the oldest shoe in the world. Shulva, sock and shoe hybrid. Who invented the heel? Convenient bed and comfortable footwear are the two most important things in life because we spend our whole life whether in bed or on foot. This phrase of the French playwright Marcel Achard was relevant long before our era. The question of what was created earlier, bed or footwear, still remains open. Sandals of Homo sapiens worn just to protect the foot is the most important and even the main element in the wardrobe of a modern man. After all, it is the footwear, in the opinion of many, that determines a person in society, his attitude to himself and to the world around him. When and how did the shoes appear? What was it manufactured of? And who invented the heel, our ancestors or the pharaohs? It is considered that footwear appeared on Earth 26 to 30,000 years ago in Western Eurasia. It was made of materials accessible to a person those days: reeds, papyrus, straw, felt, and even wood. However, from the ancient prototypes, only leather shoe version has survived. It is generally believed that the oldest shoes are leather ones found in the mountains of Armenia. Well, it was a closed space, so the leather was preserved in a certain microclimate. It was just a piece of leather that was bandaged along the leg with rawhide strips. One can barely call it a shoe. However, this find is dated more than 5,500 years before the birth of Christ. The history of nomad shoes has more than 1 millennium. According to scientists, full-fledged boots were the first to be worn by our ancestors. With their light hand, this footwear has become ubiquitous. Historians say that Kazakh leather boots, Saptama etik, are not much younger than their Armenian counterparts. We can consider that Saptama etik already existed more than 2,000 years ago. I think when the technology of felting appeared, someone started using felt as a bootleg. Historical artifacts indicate that nomadic shoes have the deepest roots. For example, felted stocking boots of Ukok princess, who is attributed to Pazyryk culture, total about 2,500 years. And the leather shoes of the Saka warrior, known to us as the Golden Man, impress the imagination with their chic decoration. This archaeological find proves that the Scythians in the 4th-5th centuries BC were able to skillfully encrust their costumes in gold and wore very fashionable boots. In order to make felt stockings similar to the Pazyryk mummies, a special thin soft felt was used. Each stocking was cut from a single piece and stitched together with a single seam along the sole and shaft. This keys by pack covered the leg almost to the groin and protruded from the boots on 10 to 15 centimeters. Their upper part was usually clad in dark-colored cotton cloth called kemkiru. They were mostly worn by nomadic cattlemen, Mongols, Tuvans, Karakalpaks, Kyrgyz, Bashkirs, Uzbeks and Uyghurs. For nomads, the most important quality of good shoes was functionality. Yurts had no floor but only felt flooring, thus it's impossible to walk around barefoot even in summer. Nomads who spent most of their life in the saddle, whether in military campaigns or crocheting with cattle, could not afford walking around in bad shoes. This means lifestyle and even nature itself dictated our ancestors what to wear. Footwear was originally made from animal skin, although there was an option to use skin suede side up. As a rule, it was used mainly with glossy side up due to the fact that glossy side has water-repellent property. It is quite an important property, especially in severe, rainy, muddy weather conditions. And the top layer of the skin protects it from water. Also, the leather sole is stitched and connected to the main part of the shoe. Due to that, it will not get wet. The etymology of the word leather in Kazakh has many options. Depending on the processing, the name of the material also changed. Also, there were different methods of workmanship, decor of ready-made boots. It can be said that the steppe people had the ability to make high-tech shoes, and its methods are used around the world. We know that in Kazakh language, tere is raw leather, Bulgara is rawhide leather, there is kun, which is roughly processed leather. Very simple, completely different to Bulgara. There are other names for very thin leather used for the inner lining. The most primitive footwear worn by the poor shepherds were leather pistons or sandals, shokhay, sharke. Even now in eastern Kazakhstan, simple slippers are also called shakhay. In ancient times, they were made of rawhide cowhide. The piece of skin which had not yet dried after cleaning from the adipose layer was bent over the foot, hair outwards. At the top, a leather cord which helped to tighten leather on the ankle was pulled through the holes. After drying, leather acquired and preserved its shape. Such pistons were worn with felt stockings. There was technology, a technology of felt boot making, when it is stitched with rawhide belts or threads from the tendon of animals. That is, the stern thread is made of horse weiß. It is very strong and at the same time very flexible, not brittle material, and it is very leg-hugging. Compared to farmers, nomadic pastoralists had a more sophisticated shoe manufacturing technology and very expensive raw materials, both by the standards of that time and by today's standards. It's leather, felt, and fur. Metal finishing was also quite expensive. Metal heel tips on toe socks, made in order to prevent shoes from wearing down on any objects. This could be some kind of decorative element such as rivets, metal buckles. As for the finishing of shoes, it could be polychrome leather inlay. When the shoe was made of several shades of material which are tightly sewn together or an applique finish was used. The nomads of Eurasia had a rich assortment of shoes, starting from home boots called baypak, massa, and finishing with sholghe, which we still use in our wardrobe but call it chulki, stockings. The name, this hybrid of the sock and the shoe, was added to the dictionary. Wearing shoes on a bare foot is very painful. Riding a horse barefoot is completely unbearable. Therefore, it was necessary to have another layer, a very soft, gentle layer, but sufficient to protect. It was baypak, felt socks or boots. The middle between socks and boots is called sholghe. Sholghe or sholok in Russian language is now fixed as chulki, stockings. It is derived from the Turkic word sholghe or sholok. Baypak had evolved into valenki, felt boots. It is more dense so that it is possible to walk around both in the snow and in dry weather. The warmest and dearest memories for all of us are, of course, those that are connected with our grandmothers and grandfathers. Ajia's granny's shawl, her worn-out kamzol jacket, grandfather's tubiteyka, skull cap, and of course, invariable attributes of the old people's wardrobe, soft massa. This kind of footwear has not yet disappeared and is in demand nowadays. Now, a lot of people in old age prefer ichigi, a kind of light footwear which has the form of boots with a soft toe and in a hard bag, and galoshes, rubber shoes, called in Kazakh massa and kibis. There were softer boot options without a heel called messe or ichigi. They were made of soft leather with soft soles. It is a lighter version of footwear. Young girls and men wore these shoes, and also it was typical footwear for children. For nomads, this type of footwear was very convenient. Firstly, masse allowed to keep their feet clean after bathing to perform namaz. Secondly, galoshes were easily removed, and ichigi, that are much warmer than socks, could be worn at home instead of them. Tatars, Uzbeks, Kyrgyz, and even Caucasians wore ichigi. Nowadays, masse, as many attributes of the national costume, adapt to the modern fashion and style. They have become much shorter and more comfortable. Our fashion designers transformed masse by encrusting soft boots with beautiful stones and embroidered ornaments. According to experts, the ancient baipak is the great-great-grandfather not only of boots, but also fashionable Ugg boots. It should be noted that neither Ugg boots nor felt boots were as widely spread among nomads as ichigi or Saptama. Why so? Felt boots were not widely spread among nomads because horse riding in them is very inconvenient. Snow sticks to the sole and forms an ice crust, which slides along the stirrup. Therefore, for the stirrup, you need a heel, and Saptama had such a heel. It is interesting that Saptama high leather men's boots with felt inside were not affordable for everyone. Shoes made of good leather and expensive trim spoke about the social status of the owner. In addition to wealthy people, only two representatives of the social hierarchy could afford good boots. Good, expensive shoes also belonged to Salo and Sira, singers and troubadours of the steppe, who were not in the top of social hierarchy. They received the shoes as a gift. The shoes were beautiful, smart and high quality. Batyrs, warriors, also wore good shoes. Batyrs could not afford to walk around in torn and poorly made shoes, as nomad's boot is part of his nomadic uniform. It is noteworthy that in the 19th and 20th centuries, Saptama sewn exclusively from thick felt was widespread. In the Soviet Union, such shoes were made in the Semigum department store, special for firefighters. Since felt perfectly saves both from the cold and from the heat, this was the best choice for firefighters. Felt boots were popular in the 60s of the 20th century. Therefore, experts are sure that Yevgeny Morgunov's shoes in the film Operatsiya Y and Other Adventures of Shurik are nothing else than the most ordinary Kazakh Saptama. The steppe girls also always had shoes in their wardrobe. Girls and young women wore mostly boots. The quality of the material and decorations depended on the family's well-being. Young preferred boots with high heels, sometimes up to 10 centimeters tall, which was called shonkayma. Older women, however, wore low-heeled boots but preferred masse and kebus. Ichigi with galoshes were also considered smart shoes for young women. Kebus was worn not only with leather masse, sometimes it was worn over special knuckles made of fabric with quilted lining. Men's boots were naturally heavier and more massive, and women gradually began to wear not only boots but also ankle boots and also shorter versions of shoes like shoes kebus with high heels. Nowadays, heel is a means to lengthen the figure, elongate female legs, but in nomadic culture it had primarily utilitarian value. Today, it is difficult to imagine a wardrobe of a real fashionista without heeled shoes. Such shoes adorn the woman and make her look more elegant. However, heels were originally designed not for aesthetic purposes and were worn by men. So who actually came up with a heel? And when did it become a symbol of latest elegance? Heel penetrated the European costume directly from the nomads of Eurasia. Initially, the first shoes, the first versions of the boots, did not have a heel. They had a soft, flexible sole. And of course, during long horse riding, it was not functional. Legs were worn down to blood. There was no support, and the legs slipped out of the stirrup. And so, in order to fixate the shoes, people began to use patches on the soles, which gradually increased, and the technology of their manufacturing constantly improved. However, some sources believe that heels were first mentioned in 4000 BC in Egypt. According to them, only Pharaoh and his entourage wore papyrus shoes, but the shoes with a heel were worn by ordinary tillers. Thanks to the heels, they moved better on loose ground. In the same ancient Egypt, the heel was also present in the shoes of the butchers so that the animal's blood would not get on the feet in the slaughterhouse. So the question is, who came up with heel, nomadic horsemen or Egyptians? The heel was made of leather. It was not wooden, solid or very comfortable. Most likely heels were layered. And nowadays, the most durable, the most resistant and the most reliable heel is made of layered leather. Here we must say that there was no such high-tech level in leather processing in the agriculture. After all, farmers can work more with wood, stone and metal, but organic materials in excess could only be in cattle-breeding civilizations. Turkey, Scythians practically did not wear such shoes. It has become widespread in the Turkic culture, and it is the first millennium of our era. Whoever invented the heel today, it is one of the main attributes of femininity, and even psychologists believe that girls on high and thin heels look very fragile. Their gait is unstable, which makes them even more attractive in the eyes of men. And it does not matter that the fashion for heels was introduced by man, the French king Saint Louis XIV. He had complexes because of his height and tried to hide it standing on the heels. But who could have guessed that the attributes of the men's medieval fashion will so organically enter the women's wardrobe? With the attainment of independence, domestic fashion designers got the second wind. So the designers began to modernize the Kazakh ethno shoes. I previously had a different business. I made different things in the national style. In the ethno image, only the shoes were not Kazakh national. Then I had an idea to revive the national shoes, so we made the first sandals in ethno style. Exceptionally natural leather, hand-sewn, authentic cut, all these make the shoes no worse than branded European shoes from the couturier. At first, everyone said that such shoes are only suitable for artists. What strange boots, many asked. Well, now both artists and ordinary people wear them. We have been doing it for 3 years, and our clients always come back to order again and again. Nowadays, we often visit different exhibitions abroad where our shoes are in high demand. Most often, they like red boots with ornament. They especially love and appreciate the ornament and respect us for it. Qualitatively sewn national shoes gradually gain popularity. People buy it as a gift or to wear themselves. Artists and even mayor of one of the Kazakhstan cities was seen in them. There are not many domestic footwear manufacturers, whether in the national style or with a universal cut. Manufacturing only started developing. However, if we recall the period when our ancestors set the tone in the industry, we can hope that our designers will succeed in repeating the success of Louboutin and Jacobs.